One of the things I always liked about when you talked about games and the programming, and when I would suggest programs, events to you, and you tell me shut the fuck up, gracefully and nicely, kindly, you would explain to me the difference between gimmicks and workouts.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I know we've talked about that before.
Some of the things you used to suggest.
Let's not use me as an example.
Like digging of holes and like digging out of a thing. Like that's kind of gimmicky. Our stuff is very defined, moving large loads, long distances quickly, through barbell movements, through a lot of body weight movements, through implements that can generate and express high amounts of power through a certain range of motion in a sense that a lot of our athletes trained for. It doesn't mean we can't ever take or go to places like that, digging or moving sandbags or hammering a spike, but those have to be done intelligently and very infrequently. Like it can't be a whole CrossFit Games of just shit like that. Like there's got to be a good bias towards CrossFit and this style of training, and and not too much of that, because some of the stuff, even some of the stuff we've done, you could argue, well, you might say, well, you're saying this about my example, but what about that when you did this, like the sledge thing, that was kind of gimmicky. Sure, it's still a functional movement, but it also was one instance of 12 or 13 different events where it was okay to do that at that point. So that stuff is, when you do see things like that, or when we do consider stuff like that, it's very intentional and not haphazard.
And you know what's funny about that? If you did the sledge hit, the hammer hit, like inside of a stadium with inside of beautiful sand boxes,
yeah,
it would look gimmicky. But you did it right out here on 65 acres of just
yeah.
It was,
well, and I was talking about the sledge thing, the implement we'd use at the games where we'd hit between the legs.
the green thing.
The green thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was also talking about that.
When there's through the years, different modalities were introduced, right? Was there? So the first games were out of the hopper, and then there were the 2008 games, and then somewhere along the line, swimming was introduced, right?
Yeah.
And I can't think of any other specific things, and now since the first year swimming was introduced, it's been in the games every year, correct?
Yeah.
Do you ever see, like, what would it take for backflips to be in the game? Would you have to see that like 80% of the people at affiliates are doing backflips in their programming? Or are you influenced by that?
Not necessarily, because look at the year we threw 100-pound snatches in the regionals. Really nobody was doing that weight at that time, so we just kind of took it there. I don't need to see people doing things to add things. Sometimes it's looking at the current level of where that degree of community is, how far they are in their progressions through things, and sometimes it's rolling the dice and trying new things. And I don't have any good examples for you.
Is there anything out there that you know that you would like to add to the games, but you just don't think it's time?
Well, do you mean like narrow me in a little?
So one year you brought in biking.
Okay.
And now we've seen the bike several times, right?
Yep.
And you brought in swimming. Is there another, are you like, man, the pogo stick would be really fucking amazing? Or I don't have an example.
Let's think of some physical
Or like
things.
shooting. Like people are always talking about shooting.
Shooting will never be.
I understand it won't be in, and I understand
Yeah.
the pogo stick won't be in. But is there this thing that you're like see on the horizon that you're like, hey, this is a movement that we need to be having?
Well, check this out.
Okay.
I can guarantee you this. If there was or it is, I'm not going to tell you right now.
Okay. But you don't have to tell me what it is. You don't have to tell me it's pogo sticking. I'm saying, is there...
You know what? Ask me that question after this year's games. You
Okay.
answer that question for yourself after this year's games.
Oh.
Deal? Okay.
So there's something special coming this year.
Just let's revisit this topic.